as they sell these, as they trade these, as they make their businesses on the backs of these records, what they are selling is not information. What they are selling is us. They're selling our future. They're selling our past. They are selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power. Once your phone is hacked, what is in their hands is not simply your device, it is your future. It's important also to remember how, but we see how these same technologies are being applied to create what they call the social credit system.
Everything is tracked, everything is accounted for, every move, every action, every conversation, every thought, everything people do is tracked. And that's where we're going with the Internet of Things and the 5G grid, which is being rolled out to people under the guise of giving them faster downloads and more efficient internet access.
If any of these family photos, if any of your activities online, if your purchases, if your associations, if your friends are in any way different from what the government or the powers that be of the moment would like them to be, you're no longer able to purchase train tickets. You're no longer able to board an airplane. You may not be able to get a passport. You may not be eligible for a job. You might not be able to work for the government. All of these things are increasingly being created and programmed and decided by algorithms. And those algorithms are fueled by precisely the innocent data that our devices are creating all of the time, constantly, invisibly, quietly, right now. Our devices are casting all of these records. You were at Starbucks at this time. You went to the hospital afterwards. You spent a long time at the hospital. After you left the hospital, you made a phone call. You made a phone call to your mother. You talked to her until the middle of the night. The hospital was an oncology clinic.
When you're looking at the Internet of Things and this 5G surveillance grid and what is really coming online, this technocracy that is coming online, everything else kind of pales into insignificance, because in this AI grid that is coming online to control us, and it will be an AI grid, it will be controlled by AI, this is in their own plans. In this grid, there is no one you can really point the finger at, there's no government you can bring down, there's no one you can really say is the controlling hand at that point. All control leaves the hands of the people and control gets handed over to the internet itself. And that's what they're working towards, and it's in all their own documents. What it leads to is the creation of the internet, and what the internet is leading to is automation of everything. That's what it's about. And there's different elements to it. And when you look at the surveillance grid itself and how this has come about, this has all come about due to the actions of what we would refer to as the shadow government. And the shadow government basically is, for all intensive purposes, a spy network that exists within all government that guides the directions that those governments take. When you look at the surveillance grid that's in place, the stuff that Snowden released, however much you want to believe of what Snowden releases, a lot of the stuff he said about the NSA surveillance system was actually very on the money. How they are able to turn on your mobile phones, they're able to monitor virtually every communication that happens on the internet, every logistics program, anybody who's got a computer network in their business or in their home or anything, all of this stuff is monitored. So the question becomes, who monitors it? Well, way back in the beginning, it came out of Project Echelon. There were data gathering centres that were set up in all countries, and all of these communications were channeled to a major office in New Zealand where it was all processed. I think a lot of it went through Australia as well. But this was all data processing back in the beginning. That became more advanced with the introduction of the Promise software.
Even if you can't see the content of these communications, the activity records, what the government calls metadata, which they argue they do not need a warrant to collect, tells the whole story. And these activity records are being created and shared and collected and intercepted constantly by companies and governments. And ultimately it means as they sell these, as they trade these, as they make their businesses on the backs of these records, what they are selling is not information. What they're selling is us. They're selling our future. They're selling our past. They are selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power.
But the thing is, it's becoming a virtual life already. Well, it already is a virtual life already of its own. The internet itself is an entity on its own, and you can think of every person who logs onto a computer or a phone or an iPad and plugs into the internet is basically a neural node of the internet. And the internet is learning from every single person that operates on the internet, all of the input that they put into the internet, all the search engines that they use, all of this stuff. I've said very often in the past, when you are actually searching on a search engine, you're not just searching for something, you're letting people know what you think. You're letting the internet know what you think. And what search engines actually are is a very, very effective way of mapping the human terrain, as is social media. It's a very, very effective way of mapping the human intellectual terrain, the spiritual terrain, the knowledge terrain of humankind. It's a very, very good way of mapping the human system and knowing what the collective human consciousness is thinking, what it's focusing on, and how it can be led, how it can be controlled.
And making our stories work for them. I try not to make that easy for them. If I get a smartphone and I need to use a phone, I actually open it up before I use it. I perform a kind of surgery on it to physically desolder or sort of melt the metal connections that hold the microphone on the phone. And I physically take this off. I remove the camera for the phone, and then I close it back up, I seal it up. And then if I need to make a phone call, I will attach an external microphone on it. And this is just so if the phone is sitting there and I'm not making a call, it cannot hear me. Now this is extreme. Most people do not need this. But for me, it's about being able to trust our technology. My phone could still be hacked. My laptop could still be hacked. And just as I told you before, the same principles apply to me. If it is hacked, they can do anything to the device that I can do. So my trust in technology is limited. But just because that's how it is today doesn't mean that's how it has to be. And a large majority of my work with the Freedom of the Press Foundation, where I serve as president of the board, is dedicated to trying to make technology more secure, to try to create programs and protocols by which we can make the communications of sources and journalists more confidential. Because if we lose the confidentiality between sources and journalists, we lose access to those essential facts that let us understand what's happening in the world. And unfortunately, under this White House, just like under the prior White House, we see the sources of very important stories that have advanced the public interest facing retaliation from a very angry government. Well, for the vast majority of my career, I was what was called a systems engineer or a systems administrator. An administrator sort of maintains and expands a system that they have inherited, and a systems engineer sort of develops new projects, new capabilities for these systems roles. What this means in short was that all of the systems at the NSA and the CIA that I was put in charge of, I had total access to. And this is just what happens with a systems administrator. When you think about a computer system, who gives someone else access? Well, someone has to be the original authority that has access to everything. That was me. And so I would say the computer guy knows everything. That's not a boast. That's simply the way these systems are designed. That's the way they're structured. And this is very much a vulnerability because it means that you have to trust. This administrator will work to the good of the users. But what happens when the people using that network, the people constructing that network, are going against the benefit of the broader society? And this put me in a very interesting kind of conflicted position. I could do what the NSA wanted me to do, or I could do what the Constitution of the United States, the public of the United States, needed me to do. Which was report that my agency had broken the law.
Do you regard yourself as a journalist these days?
I'm not. I have tremendous respect for journalists, but I try to keep a distance, particularly in this moment where so much of journalism is coming under attack. Because the government has a tremendous incentive to discredit me, to make people distrust me. And so if I hold myself out, if I start reporting stories, if I start talking to sources, if I try to start advancing what the public knows on a personal level, my reputation could sort of poison the well. Instead, I keep a distinction. What I do is I try to aid the work of journalism, but I'm not myself a journalist. So in the wake of the revelations of mass surveillance in 2013, this was suddenly the world's biggest story. In every country, they were talking about the same thing. And unfortunately, that meant that everyone who was connected to me in some way, they were also talking about, because they were trying to say who I was, where I came from. And this unfortunately meant that Lindsay, my lifelong partner, was intensely investigated, both by the FBI in the United States. She didn't know what I was doing. I could not tell her what I was doing, because if I had, they would have said she was an accessory to the crime. They would have said she was part of a criminal conspiracy, so long as she didn't immediately pick up the phone and say, help, help, someone's talking to a journalist. And so this meant that I couldn't tell her. She learned about what was going to happen the same way everybody else did, or rather what is happening the same way everybody else did. She saw me on TV, which probably makes me the worst boyfriend in the history of the United States. But she stuck by me, and we are reunited and together today. And I will never be able to repay her for the faith that she's shown me.